Clara stood in front of the mirror, her heart racing, her hands slightly trembling as she adjusted her veil. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, but the only thing she could feel was a tight knot in her stomach. She glanced at the wedding dress, the beautiful lace and silk that she had picked out months ago, and for a moment, she questioned if any of this was real. The church was filled with friends and family, everyone waiting for her to walk down the aisle. She could already hear the soft hum of the wedding music playing in the background. Everything was set, perfect even. The flowers, the candles, the soft light streaming through the stained glass windows. But it didn't matter. None of it mattered anymore. Lucas, her soon-to-be husband, had been distant in the past few weeks. But she'd brushed it off. After all, pre-wedding jitters were common, right? But as Clara walked down the aisle, her heart skipped a beat when she saw his face. He wasn't smiling. There were no tears of joy, no looks of admiration. His expression was blank, distant. Clara's heart pounded louder in her chest as she reached the altar. The weight of his cold gaze felt unbearable. She took her place beside him, waiting for the ceremony to begin. The priest spoke the familiar words, but Clara's mind wandered. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, the silence between them almost deafening. She thought of the days leading up to this moment, the late-night talks, the laughter, the dreams of their future together. Where had it all gone wrong? Then, just as the priest asked, "Do you, Lucas, take Clara to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Everything froze. He hesitated. A long pause. The room seemed to shrink, the air thick with anticipation. And then, his voice, soft but firm, cut through the silence. "I can't." Clara's world shattered. Her heart lurched in her chest as his words echoed in her mind. "I can't." She couldn't breathe. The sound of the music, the faces of her family, the murmurs of confusion, they all seemed distant, as if they were happening to someone else. Lucas turned away from her, and the priest cleared his throat awkwardly. Clara stood there, frozen, the tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to run, to scream, to make it all go away, but her legs wouldn't move. She was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. The guests began to stir, the quiet murmurs growing louder. The reality of what was happening hit Clara like a cold wave, and in that moment, she understood. Lucas had been distant for a reason, and now, in front of everyone, he had rejected her. The love she thought was solid, the life they had planned together, was gone. Without a word, she turned and walked away. The church was silent as she passed her family, their eyes filled with confusion and concern. But Clara couldn't meet their gazes. She could barely hold herself together as she reached the door and stepped into the bright afternoon light. She walked down the steps of the church, the fresh air feeling like a slap to her face. She didn't know where she was going, or even what she was going to do. All she knew was that she couldn't stay there, couldn't let herself be defined by what had just happened. As the reality of the situation sank in, Clara made a decision that would change the course of her life. She would still go on her honeymoon. Alone. Clara wiped away her tears and pulled out her phone. She quickly changed her flight details, booked a resort in the Caribbean, and packed her bags. She wasn't going to let this moment break her. If anything, she was going to take control of the situation. The plane ride was a blur. Clara sat by the window, staring out at the clouds, the deep ache in her chest still lingering. But with every passing hour, the weight of the wedding dress she'd left behind seemed lighter. The idea of leaving her old life behind was starting to feel less like an escape, and more like a rebirth. She didn't know what to expect when she landed, but she was ready. Ready to face whatever came next, no matter how difficult. Clara arrived at the resort, a tropical paradise nestled on a secluded island, surrounded by pristine white sand beaches, and the sound of gentle waves lapping at the shore. She could almost feel the warmth of the sun through the windows of the taxi, as it made its way down a winding road lined with palm trees. The beauty of the place should have lifted her spirits, but instead, it only made her feel more alone. The staff greeted her with warm smiles as she stepped out of the car, offering to take her bags and welcome her to the resort. Clara forced a smile in return, nodding politely, but her mind was elsewhere. She wasn't here to enjoy the luxuries of this resort. She was here to escape, to put distance between herself and the man who had broken her heart in front of everyone. Her room was a modern, spacious suite with a breathtaking view of the ocean. A king-sized bed, a private balcony, and large windows that let in the gentle breeze from the sea. It was everything she could have asked for, yet it felt hollow. Clara dropped her luggage by the door and wandered onto the balcony, gazing out at the endless horizon. The vastness of the ocean reminded her of how small she felt, how insignificant. She spent the first few days at the resort in a haze of disbelief. The days blurred together, spent wandering the beach, reading by the pool, or sitting quietly in her room. She wasn't sure what she was waiting for, but she couldn't seem to shake the feeling of emptiness that hung over her like a dark cloud. She had wanted to be here, wanted to prove that she could still enjoy life. But instead, the silence of the resort only made her feel more isolated. Clara wasn't used to being alone. Not like this. She had always had Lucas by her side, her confidant, her partner. And now, with him gone, she didn't know who she was without him. The worst part wasn't the hurt or the rejection. It was the sense of being untethered. She had lost not only her fiancé, but also her sense of self. One afternoon, Clara decided to take a walk along the beach. The waves crashed softly at her feet as she walked barefoot along the shore, her thoughts swirling like the ocean currents. She stopped at a quiet spot where the sand met the rocks and stood there, staring out at the water. She closed her eyes, letting the wind whip through her hair, trying to silence the noise in her mind. It was there, in that moment of solitude, that she saw him. A man stood a few feet away, watching her with a curious expression. He was tall, with dark hair and a rugged yet approachable look. He didn't seem out of place on the beach. His casual clothes, his easy smile, and the way he carried himself made him seem like someone who belonged to the island. But what caught Clara's attention was his eyes, warm and inviting, yet holding something deeper, a sense of quiet understanding. He approached her slowly, his footsteps muffled by the sand. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his voice calm and steady, "but I couldn't help but notice that you seem lost." Clara turned to face him, taken aback by his directness. She hadn't expected anyone to approach her, let alone speak to her like that. But there was something in his tone, something kind and genuine, that made her pause. For a moment, she considered walking away, but something held her there. "I'm not lost," she replied, her voice softer than she meant it to be. "Just trying to find some peace." He nodded, as if he understood. "I know how that feels. Sometimes peace is the hardest thing to find when everything around you feels like a storm." Clara didn't respond at first. She simply studied him, unsure of what to say. It wasn't every day that a stranger spoke to her like that, especially on an island like this. She had expected to be alone, to wallow in her heartbreak without interruption. But here he was, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, life wasn't as empty as it seemed. "I'm Ben," he said, breaking the silence. "I've been coming to this place for years. It's one of the few spots where I can escape from everything." Clara's brow furrowed, and she blinked in surprise. "Ben?" She repeated his name, almost as if to confirm it. The coincidence was too strange to ignore. She was sure he wasn't the same Ben. This man was a complete stranger. But the name stirred something inside her. "I know," he chuckled. "It's a bit ironic, isn't it?" Clara couldn't help but smile at that. She let out a soft laugh, the first one in days, though it felt a little forced. "It is." There was a brief silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was as if the world around them had momentarily paused. Clara wasn't sure why she felt so at ease with this stranger. Perhaps it was his calm demeanor, or the way he seemed to understand the weight of her words without pressing her for more. "I know it's none of my business," Ben continued, his tone gentle, "but sometimes the best way to heal is to stop trying so hard. You don't have to figure everything out right now." Clara looked at him, surprised by his insight. She had been trying so hard to make sense of her life after everything that had happened, to force herself into a new version of reality. Maybe, for the first time in days, she could take a breath and let herself just be. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Ben smiled warmly. "You're welcome. Take your time." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Clara standing on the beach, her thoughts a little clearer, her heart a little lighter. The days that followed felt different. Clara woke up each morning with a renewed sense of purpose. The heavy weight of her heartbreak hadn't disappeared, but somehow, the air around her felt easier to breathe. She found herself looking forward to the moments when she could go for a walk along the beach, knowing that Ben would be there. They didn't speak every time they crossed paths, but each encounter felt like a quiet comfort. It was on the 4th day of her stay that she decided to take a different path, one that led her further down the beach, past the usual spots where tourists gathered. It was a path less traveled, lined with wild vegetation and rocks that jutted out from the sand like natural sculptures. She had no real destination in mind, just the desire to be alone, to escape the suffocating silence of her resort room. As she walked, she found her mind wandering again to thoughts of Lucas. She wondered if he was still with his friends, if he was already forgetting about her. A sharp pang of jealousy twisted in her chest, but she quickly silenced it. He had made his choice, and it was time for her to do the same. But how could she move on when she still couldn't make sense of everything? Her thoughts were interrupted when she saw him again. Ben. He was sitting on a large rock near the water, his back turned to her. She could tell he was deep in thought, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Something about the solitude of the moment pulled her in, and without thinking, she found herself walking closer. "Hey," she called out, her voice tentative. Ben turned, surprised, but smiled when he saw her. "Hey," he replied, standing up. "I wasn't expecting to see anyone out here. It's nice to have the beach to yourself, don't you think?" Clara nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Yeah, it's peaceful. I've been coming out here to think." Ben motioned to the spot next to him. "It's the perfect place for that. You're welcome to join me." Without hesitation, Clara sat down beside him. They were both silent for a few moments, simply watching the waves crash against the shore. It felt natural, being with him like this, without the weight of small talk or forced conversation. Finally, Ben broke the silence. "You know, I've been coming to this place for years, but I don't think I've ever really taken the time to just sit and watch the ocean. It's easy to get caught up in everything else. Work, life, the things we think we need. But sometimes, we just need to stop and breathe." Clara looked at him, appreciating the simplicity of his words. "I've been trying to do that," she admitted. "I've been running away from everything, and now, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next." Ben's expression softened, and he turned toward her, his voice calm and steady. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now. Sometimes the best thing you can do is take things one step at a time. Let the answers come to you when they're ready." Clara met his gaze, and for the first time since she had arrived at the island, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She didn't have all the answers, but maybe she didn't need them right away. Maybe she could take things slowly, like Ben suggested. "You're right," she said quietly. "I've been trying so hard to move on, but maybe it's okay to just be." Ben smiled, his eyes warm. "Exactly. There's no rush. The answers will come when you're ready to listen." They sat there for a while longer, in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. It was as though the world had slowed down, giving Clara the chance to breathe and reflect. She hadn't realized how much she needed this moment until now. As the sun set, casting a soft orange glow across the sky, Clara stood up, brushing the sand from her legs. I should probably head back before it gets dark. Ben nodded, standing up with her. Yeah, it's getting late. But I'm glad you came out here today. It's been nice to talk. Clara smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Thank you. I'm glad I did too. They walked back toward the resort together, the sound of their footsteps mingling with the crash of the waves. As they reached the entrance to the resort, Clara turned to Ben. I'll see you around? He grinned. I'm sure you will. With a final nod, Clara turned and walked toward her room, her thoughts lighter than they had been in days. She wasn't sure where this connection with Ben would lead, or if it was even something she should pursue. But for the first time, she felt hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, this trip wasn't just about escaping the past. It was about discovering something new, something unexpected. The following morning, Clara woke up to the sound of waves crashing gently against the shore. The peacefulness of the island was both comforting and unnerving. It was as though the world around her was offering a chance to reset, to breathe, but the remnants of her past were still looming in her mind. She had spent so much time thinking about Lucas, about the life they had planned together. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Not here. Not like this. She had left the comfort of routine. But the truth was, routine had been all she had ever known. And now, she found herself in an unfamiliar place, still trapped by memories that refused to fade. After a quick breakfast, Clara decided to go for a walk to clear her mind. She walked slowly through the resort's gardens, taking in the lush greenery and vibrant flowers that seemed so out of place compared to the heaviness she felt inside. She knew that the next step, the real step, was confronting everything she had been running from. It wasn't enough to just exist in the present. She needed to reconcile with her past. But could she? As she made her way down a quieter path near the edge of the property, she spotted Ben again, sitting alone on a bench under a large palm tree. This time, there was something different about him. He seemed distant, lost in thought, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Clara hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to approach, but something in her urged her forward. Hey, she called out softly, stepping closer. Ben looked up, his expression softening when he saw her. Hey, Clara. I didn't expect to see you here this morning. I could say the same. She smiled, sitting down beside him. There was a brief moment of silence before she spoke again. I've been thinking a lot, and I realize I need to talk about some things. Ben turned to her, his brow furrowing slightly. You don't have to talk about anything you're not ready for. But if you want to, I'm here. Clara nodded, her throat tight with emotion. I don't even know where to start. It's just, I've been trying so hard to move on from Lucas. I keep thinking about everything that happened, about how I ended up here, alone. She paused, her fingers brushing the edge of the bench. I don't even know if I can forgive him for what he did. I'm angry, Ben. So angry. Ben's eyes softened with understanding. I get it. What he did wasn't right. But holding on to that anger, it's only going to hurt you in the end. Clara looked at him, unsure. But if I forgive him, doesn't that mean I'm letting him off the hook? No, Ben replied gently. Forgiving someone isn't about letting them off the hook. It's about letting go of the power they have over you. It's about freeing yourself from the past. Clara's chest tightened at his words. It sounded so simple, but she couldn't shake the bitterness that had taken root inside her. How could she forgive him for breaking her heart? How could she let go of everything they had built together? Ben seemed to sense her struggle. It's not easy, and it's not something you can do overnight. But maybe start small. Maybe think about what it would feel like if you could just put that anger down, even for a moment. Clara took a deep breath, her mind racing. The idea of letting go of her anger, of giving up the pain that had defined her for so long, felt impossible. But she knew that if she didn't try, she'd continue to be stuck, caught between the life she had imagined and the one she was living now. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's okay," Ben said, his tone steady. "Take your time. But remember, it's your life. You're the one who gets to decide what kind of person you want to be. You don't have to carry that weight forever." Clara nodded slowly, feeling the truth of his words sink in. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but maybe, just maybe, she could begin to let go. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound being the rustle of the palm leaves in the breeze. Clara felt a strange sense of calm wash over her, a quiet realization that the path ahead wouldn't be without its struggles, but it was hers to navigate. Eventually, Ben stood up, stretching his arms above his head. "I'm going for a swim. Want to join me?" Clara looked at him, surprised by the shift in his mood. He was light, carefree, as though his words earlier had released something inside him too. And for a brief moment, Clara wondered if there was something more between them, something neither of them had yet acknowledged. "I think I'll pass today," she replied with a smile. "But I'll catch you later." "Definitely." Ben grinned. "Take care, Clara." As she watched him walk away toward the beach, Clara felt a flicker of hope. Maybe it wasn't about forgetting the past entirely. Maybe it was about learning how to live with it, how to embrace the parts of her life that had been broken and rebuild from there. And as the sun began to climb higher in the sky, Clara felt like she was finally starting to see the light. The day seemed to stretch endlessly before Clara, as if time had slowed down just for her. There was an unfamiliar sense of clarity hanging in the air, as though she had taken a deep breath and was finally allowing herself to truly exhale. For the first time since arriving at the resort, she felt the weight of her past beginning to lift, piece by piece. It had been a few days since her conversation with Ben, and though she hadn't entirely let go of the hurt and anger, she felt lighter. There was still so much to process, so many emotions to untangle, but she was no longer consumed by them. She knew she had the power to choose how to move forward, and that realization alone made her feel freer than she had in months. That afternoon, after a light lunch by the pool, Clara decided to take a walk along the beach. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was like a calming melody, pulling her into the present moment. She felt the sand cool against her feet as she walked along the water's edge, each step bringing her closer to the peace she had been searching for. As she walked, Clara's mind drifted back to Lucas. She had spent so much time wondering what went wrong, what she could have done differently. But now, with the ocean breeze in her hair and the sound of seagulls overhead, she understood something crucial. She could never change the past. It was time to stop trying to rewrite it. Her thoughts were interrupted when she spotted Ben in the distance, sitting on a large rock near the water, looking out at the horizon. There was something about him, something that made her want to share more of herself with him, as though he understood her pain without needing words. Clara hesitated for a moment, but then found herself walking toward him. When she reached the rock, she paused, unsure if she should interrupt his solitude. But Ben's head turned as soon as he heard her footsteps. "Hey," he said, his voice warm as ever. "Hey," Clara replied, giving him a small smile. "I didn't want to interrupt, just thought I'd say hi." "You're not interrupting," Ben said, patting the rock beside him. "Sit with me." Clara sat down, feeling the weight of her thoughts lift even more in his presence. The two sat in comfortable silence, listening to the waves and watching the sun dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the water. It felt like the world had stopped for just a moment, as if everything had aligned perfectly. Eventually, Clara spoke, her voice soft but steady. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day, about forgiveness. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive Lucas yet, but I think I'm starting to understand what you meant. I can't keep holding on to all that anger. It's eating me alive." Ben didn't say anything at first, letting her words settle between them. Then he turned to face her, his expression sincere. I'm proud of you, Clara. You're doing the right thing. Forgiveness isn't about him. It's about you. Letting go of that weight is the only way you'll ever truly be free. Clara nodded slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek despite the warmth of the moment. She didn't want to cry. Not now. Not in front of Ben. But the emotions had been building up, and for the first time she allowed herself to feel them fully. I never realized how heavy it all was, she admitted. How much it was affecting everything. My job, my friends, even my own happiness. I thought I was doing okay, but I was just pretending. Ben reached over and gently wiped the tear from her cheek, his touch tender and reassuring. It's okay. You're not alone in this. It's okay to feel broken sometimes. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. Clara smiled at him, feeling a connection grow between them. It wasn't just the words he spoke, but the way he seemed to truly understand her, without judgment. It was rare, and it felt like a gift she hadn't expected. As the sun began to set, casting vibrant oranges and purples across the sky, Clara turned her gaze to the horizon. Do you think we're ever really ready for things like this? For big changes? For letting go of the past? Ben considered her question, then said thoughtfully, I don't think anyone is ever fully ready. But I think the best we can do is take things one step at a time. And when the time is right, we'll know. Clara smiled, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could see a path forward, like she could finally take control of her own story. As the last light of the day faded into twilight, Clara turned to Ben, a sense of peace in her heart. Thank you, Ben, for everything. Ben gave her a warm smile. You don't have to thank me. I'm just glad to see you starting to find your way. And in that moment, Clara realized that perhaps this trip wasn't just about escaping the pain of her past. It was about rediscovering who she was, without Lucas, without anyone else's expectations. Just Clara, in her own skin, ready to embrace whatever the future held. With the last remnants of the sunset fading into the night sky, Clara felt a new chapter beginning. And for the first time, she was ready to face it head-on. The morning after their conversation on the beach, Clara woke up with a sense of quiet optimism. The sun filtered through the large windows of her room, bathing the space in soft golden light. For the first time since the wedding, she didn't feel burdened by the weight of the past. The shadow that had hung over her was starting to dissipate, and with it, so were the walls she had built around her heart. Clara dressed in a light, flowing sundress, her mind drifting back to the previous days, the conversations with Ben, the introspection, the freedom she had felt on the beach. Each day had been a revelation, and now it seemed as if the universe was offering her a fresh start. It was a chance to redefine herself, to find out who she was without the crutch of old relationships, the echoes of painful memories. The resort was quiet in the early morning hours, with most guests still asleep or enjoying the early mist along the beach. Clara decided to take a walk alone, hoping the solitude would allow her to think more clearly. The ocean stretched out before her, vast and endless, a perfect mirror for her state of mind. As she walked, she found herself contemplating her future. She thought of Lucas, the man she had loved for so many years. And then she thought of Ben, who had become a friend, someone who had gently shown her a different way to view her life. Clara knew she wasn't ready for a relationship just yet. The emotional scars were still fresh, and there was so much about herself that she needed to explore first. But she also realized that this journey, this trip, had taught her something important. She didn't need anyone else to complete her. She could be whole on her own. As she walked along the beach, Clara's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, expecting it to be a message from her mother or a friend back home, but it was a notification from her work. There was a new project being offered to her, a huge opportunity that she had been hoping for. Clara's heart skipped a beat. This could be the breakthrough she had been waiting for. It was an opportunity to redefine her career, to step into something new, something exciting. With the same sense of calm determination she'd cultivated over the past few days, Clara made her decision. She would accept the project. She would embrace this new chapter of her life, both personally and professionally. She was ready to take charge. Later that morning, after her walk, Clara met Ben for breakfast. They sat at a quiet table by the ocean, the sound of the waves accompanying their conversation. As they talked, Clara couldn't help but notice the way Ben's presence had shifted from a comforting figure into something more, something undefined, but undeniably real. She smiled at him, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. Ben, I've been thinking. I'm ready to move forward, not just with my career, but with my life. Ben looked at her, his gaze steady and supportive. I'm really proud of you, Clara. It's not easy to take that first step, but I can see that you're on the right path. Clara nodded, her eyes meeting his with gratitude. I've realized something, Ben. It's not about getting back to where I was. It's about creating something new. And that starts with me. It starts with letting go of everything that held me back. Ben smiled softly, and Clara felt her heart stir. The feeling was gentle, free of expectations. There was no rush, no need to define anything. But the connection between them was undeniable. As they finished breakfast, Clara stood up, a sense of purpose in her step. I'm going to make the most of this, she said, determination in her voice. It's time to live for me, to build the life I've always wanted. Ben stood as well, his eyes warm with approval. And you will. You've already come so far. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the last few months lift off her shoulders. The future stretched out before her, full of possibilities. There would be challenges, of course, but now she felt equipped to face them with courage, knowing that she had the strength to overcome anything. She turned to Ben one last time before she left for her final day at the resort. Thank you, Ben. You've been a big part of my healing. I'll never forget this. Ben nodded, his smile sincere. Take care of yourself, Clara, and know that you've got a friend in me. Always. With one last look at the serene horizon, Clara knew that this trip had given her more than just a vacation. It had given her a new beginning, a chance to be the person she was always meant to be. As she walked away, Clara felt the stirrings of excitement in her chest. She wasn't just moving on from the past. She was stepping into a future she had designed herself. It was hers to create, and she was ready.